Welcome back, Sebastian here. Time for my preview for this weekend's Brazilian Grand Prix. So obviously, starting with last year's race, last year was quite an exciting race, one of the best races of the year, I thought. Russell got the win, his maiden Grand Prix win in Formula 1, and of course Mercedes' only win last year. Coming second was Lewis Hamilton, and third was Carlos Sainz. Some of the big moments from that race was, of course, Kevin Magnussen getting pole in that wet qualifying session. Of course, Russell then won the sprint and then the Grand Prix after. There was contact in the opening laps between Verstappen and Hamilton, which really compromised Verstappen's race. Probably compromised Hamilton a little bit with damage from that contact, but Verstappen definitely came off worse there. Of course, towards the end of the race, the big talking point was Verstappen and Perez, with Verstappen basically disobeying team orders to let Perez pass on the opening lap, or on the final lap, as he was fighting for second in the championship with Charles Leclerc at the time. Based on the results of the following race in Abu Dhabi, the last race of the season, Verstappen disobeying the team orders here kind of became irrelevant, but still it was a big talking point after last year's Grand Prix. So next, moving on to the track. Pretty interesting track, a very old school track, been used in Formula 1 for a very long time. And I do think it's one of the better tracks on the calendar. Now, if you listen to the Sky Sports feed, you'll hear Crofty using the corner names, not the corner numbers, for many of these corners. So that's why I've decided to include both here. Of course, you start with turn 1, 2, and 3, which are effectively the Senna S's. The downhill section of course is very interesting and very tricky as well. Then we have the Retta Pasta, basically the straight between turns 3 and turn 4. You have Descida del Lago, which is basically turns 4 and 5. Ferradura, turn 6. Sector 2 is very slow speed, lots of slow speed corners, 8, 9, 10, quite all at pretty slow speed. Now, you have Mergelada, I feel like I butchered that name, and of course, Jinsao. And I'll get back to that a bit later towards the end. Now, for the track, it's quite a power-sensitive circuit with effectively this one long straight all the way from turn 12 up to turn 1 of the following lap. Your best overtaking chances are turn 1 and turn 4, and both can give you a good move. Of course, if you get overtaken in turn 1, you can always try to get that position back into turn 4. That being said, despite it being a power-sensitive track, you do need a good amount of downforce for Sector 2. And you will definitely see teams basically go with different setups this weekend in that regard. Some will favor the Sector 2, others will focus more on the basically Sector 3 and Sector 1. And of course, Sector 12, exit of turn 12, Jinsao, is probably the most important part of the entire lap. Being able to get a really good exit out of that corner gives you the speed to make an overtake down at turn 1, which Lewis Hamilton demonstrated so effectively at the Grand Prix and the sprint in the Grand Prix in 2021, coming from the back with that basically disqualification from qualifying and eventually winning the Grand Prix on Sunday. So, looking at the tires for this weekend, we have the 3 medium tires in the range, hard C2, medium C3, and soft C4, same as at Coda. I don't know, not a whole lot to say on the tires themselves. I do feel like Brazil's not exactly the hardest on its tires, but we have seen a mixture of 1-stop and 2-stop before, so we'll see how things go this weekend. Now, looking at the schedule and looking at the weather, Friday, FP1, of course, it's a sprint weekend this weekend, so only one practice session, FP1, 11:30 local time, qualifying 3 p.m. local time. There's a 40-ish% chance, depending on the website you look at, of rain and thunderstorms on Sunday or on Friday. So there is a chance that we do get rain during practice and in qualifying, which would definitely be a massive headache for the teams not having data on a dry track. Saturday, small risk of rain in the morning before sprint qualifying, but it should be dry for sprint qualifying and for the sprint. Sunday, it looks like it'll be the coolest day of the 3, about 20 degrees Celsius, and it looks like it'll be quite dry. So Grand Prix at 2 p.m. local time should be in dry conditions. I think just going back to the Saturday, I think, sprint qualifying 11 a.m. and sprint at 3:30 p.m. local time. So Looks like we might have some rain. It would be nice to have one qualifying session in the wet and one qualifying session in the dry, as it does give you slightly different grids, like we had at the Austrian Grand Prix grass / Austrian sprint, and that was definitely one of the things that made the sprint for that weekend a bit better, the fact that you had such a different grid. So I think if we can either have a wet sprint or a wet sprint qualifying, I think that would definitely help things, spice things up quite a bit. Now, finishing off this video with some predictions, I do think this is this is one of probably the last track that I think someone other than Red Bull could win. I think that, of course, Vegas coming up in 2 weeks' time is a complete unknown, so of course things could happen there. But Abu Dhabi, the teams know very well, it's a very average track and it usually benefits the best team. But anyway, back on track to Brazil. I think I'm going to still go with a Max Verstappen win, but I think of all the races this season, I think that going into the weekend before qualifying and everything, I do think that this is the one that has one of the highest chances of someone other than Verstappen winning. Obviously, with Singapore, we didn't really know going into the weekend how bad Red Bull would be at Singapore. But for this weekend, I think that this will definitely be Hamilton's best chance of a win this year, and thus I'm predicting him second. I do think Verstappen will be the favorite going into the weekend, but Hamilton's shown that he is very, very good at this track. It was very good last year. Probably would have won that race without the damage from the contact with Verstappen. Won in 2021 from the back. So we know that he is very good at this track. And Verstappen and Mercedes were quite good last year. They were quite good in COTA, quite good in Mexico. So on race pace, I do think they have a very good chance here. So I'm going to predict Hamilton second. Third place, I think it's a hard call. Last time I predicted Perez on the podium and he ended up going one corner. He didn't even make the first corner of the Grand Prix. So I don't think I'm going to go with that again. I think Ferrari, I don't know if Ferrari's going to have the race pace. They've struggled with that relative to their qualifying form. And so I'm not sure how that's going to go. I think I'm going to go with Lando Norris third. He had excellent race pace last time out in Mexico. If he hadn't messed up his qualifying, I think he easily gets on that podium. So for this time out, I think as long as McLaren's good enough through, I'd say, Sector 2, and I think obviously Sector 2 it's slow speed, but it's not Monaco slow. And then Sector 1 and 2, Sector 1, the corners there aren't too slow either. Of course, having that slightly draggier car that the McLaren have, might be a problem, but even last year with last year's Mercedes, which was a pretty draggy car as well, they were very good here at Brazil, so it doesn't seem to be as much of a problem as it is at other tracks. So that's all for my preview for this weekend's Brazilian Grand Prix. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Who do you think is going to take the win? Who do you think is going to round out the podium? Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.